Hey guys, back with the Jeep Willys engine. Today I'm going to show you how to tape off your machine surfaces on your block. Obviously we've got a machine surface on top and we're getting ready to paint this with a product. Let me show you what we have. This is from Eastwood. This is their 2K aerosol high temp engine primer. And you know, this is a great two-part paint that actually catalyzes. It's much better than the stuff you buy at the parts store. You can see it has a little red plunger in here, and you put that in the bottom. Of course, you shake it up for 2 minutes. You take this red plunger and you pierce this valve in the bottom, and that releases the catalyst, and you get a really hard finish on there. But before you can even start doing that, you need to tape off your machine surfaces. These are the spots where you're going to have gasket sealing. Obviously, those are machined and shiny, and we want to keep the paint off of those items so that we get, you know, good gasket sealing on those. And a tip I've learned, I didn't come up with this myself, I've seen this on other YouTube videos, but it's very handy when you're taping off these block castings that are kind of gnarly. These old blocks, you know, they didn't have really good casting technology. Most of these are sand castings, so you kind of have, you know, rugged edges. You can see right here on the corner, you know, that part of the sand came out of the mold when they built this engine, and it's hard to get a razor blade along that. So what I do is I tape everything off, and then I take a little tack hammer, and this ironically enough is the little tack hammer that I used when I was a kid building train sets with my dad, and here I am, you know, 30 years later using it to tape off and mask. It's the perfect tool because it has this little tiny end and this big end, and basically what you do is you tape off your machine surface, and you just take this and tap along the edge, and if you look real close, you'll see it'll start to and this is where the small part of the hammer comes in handy. Around these imperfections and these corners in the casting, I can kind of come up like that and go along. Now you'll be tempted to take the hammer and just rub it down here, and that's not a good move because it can bunch up this area and make it hard to get a good clean line when you're painting. So just go ahead and tap around this, and what you see it does is it starts to cut the painter's tape, and this is just regular painter's tape. This is Scotch blue tape. You know, you can get this anywhere, and it works pretty good here. Now, of course, we clean the block really well. You know, this block is, I typically take them out to be sandblasted. On this one I didn't because it had so much machining work done to it that it's been cleaned so well. I did take a wire brush to it, and I did take a, let me show you real quick if I have it over here. I took a wire brush to it, and I also took a steel brush to get into all the little corners everywhere to get the rust out of the tight spots. But I use a 3M. I used a 3M product, these little green disc, which I'll put links in the descriptions to, and an air compressor to kind of go over the whole thing. And of course, I'll rinse this down with acetone to get the area cleaned up. But right now, I'm just kind of taping it off. And this is how you do it. You just kind of hammer around this. And don't worry, this is a cast iron block. I probably wouldn't do this on an aluminum block or an aluminum head, but this is cast iron. This is not going to hurt it at all. This is a very lightweight hammer. So we're just kind of going around. And again, when you get to the tight corners, you want to switch to your small part of your hammer and just kind of get in there and hammer that tape against that edge, and it'll cut it off pretty good. And then once you're done with that, you can pull this off pretty easy, and I'll show you that here in just a second. All the way down to the bottom. And like I said, once you hammer over it, then you can kind of rub it with the head of the hammer, and that'll kind of get all the little spots you missed. But you don't want to do this rubbing action until you've peened it with the hammer a little bit, because if you don't do that first, it won't come off very easy. And then if you're real careful now, I'll show you, this will just kind of come off, and some of it just falls away on its own, but the rest of it, you know, you just kind of be smart about it and just kind of push it off. all the way around. And I'm careful to kind of pull it away from the surface so that it, or towards the surface so that it doesn't lift. And you'll get periodically little pieces, but you can just kind of scrape those off with your fingernail. And you end up with a really nice, clean line when you're doing this. So most of this is off. I got one little piece here because we've got kind of another surface right here where this mates up here. So we'll kind of pull that off. And there you go. So now we have a nice clean paint edge so that when we paint this block, we will not be getting paint on our machine surface where our gasket seals up. So Nina, if you go ahead and pause it, I'll get ready to paint some components on the front of the engine. Be right back, guys.
Oh.
Hey guys, so real quick, getting ready to spray some components here. You can see I've got the front engine plate, I've got the valve cover, and I've got the timing cover here, as well as the oil dipstick tube and the water inlet thermostat housing. And I'm going to be using this Eastwood AeroSpray Epoxy Primer in the gray finish. We're not using the high temp on this because none of this is close to the exhaust or anything. But the way this works is you shake it up for 2 minutes, which I've already done, and then you pull this red cap out of the bottom and you put it down here and you press this down on the ground. And what that did is released the catalyst into the paint. So now we need to shake it for another 2 minutes to get the catalyst. We already shook it once to mix the paint up, and now we're shaking it again to get the catalyst mixed up. And I won't film shaking this for 2 minutes, but we're gonna go pause for a little bit, and when we come back, we're gonna show you how to coat these really well with this Eastwood 2K AeroSpray Epoxy Primer. Be right back, guys.
Go.
Okay, so I have popped the red button into the bottom. I've wiped down all my parts with acetone. First, most of these parts are sandblasted first, but then as it sat waiting for me to paint them, got a little bit of spot rust on them. So we went over it with the 3M sanding disc and on an air tool and side grinder or side cutter, and then we also got a steel brush to get in the nooks and crannies. And now we've shaken this up for 2 minutes, popped the catalyst in the bottom, shook it for another 2 minutes, and now I've turned this spray can so that this nozzle, you can see you can turn this. I turn this up and down so that we get a nice fan. And I'm going to go ahead and start painting. You've got about 48 hours of pot life on this, meaning that once you pop that red button in there and get the catalyst flowing, you have about 48 hours to use this product. So, we're aware of that and making sure that we're doing light coats. It is going to cure pretty fast because this is catalyzed. So, going to have a quick setup time. So we're just going to get a light coat over it first. Try to get all the edges and position everything to where we can get good coverage, and our ceiling surfaces are down, so we don't want to paint those. Try to get this going the exact direction I want it. There's a little dial on the top too, so you can dial it down. There we go. This gives me a little nicer geometry. This catalyzed paint is going to be much harder than the stuff you buy at the parts store, for doing this type of stuff. This is as close as you can get to having somebody do this in a spray shop, which, if I was painting body parts, I would definitely do that. But we're painting engine components, which, have pretty porous surfaces, so we're not too concerned with the show and finish on these. This is a, you know, a daily driver, so more concerned with rust prevention and just generally, you know, a nice look on the engine. But I'm just going to go around and put small coats of these things, let it kind of kick off for about 30 minutes, and apply another coat until these things have a nice coat of primer on them. And then our next step will be to let these sit overnight, and we will come in and do the actual color, which in this case is going to be black, and we're going to be using that high temp black engine paint to do that, and we'll show that as well when we get to that stage. You know, how are we doing on time on this video?
10 minutes and 59 seconds.
Perfect. So we'll go ahead and pause here while I finish painting this, and in our next video, you'll see us applying the actual color to these items. Thanks, guys.